Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have Mr. Theo Priestley. How are you, Theo?
I'm very well, Andrew. How are you?
Very, very good. And where are you joining us from today? I might be able to guess from the accent, actually, but maybe north of the border, north of Hadrian's Wall.
Yes, I'm based in Edinburgh, so I'm coming from a rather dreary-looking Edinburgh as I look out the window this morning.
No, surely not.
It's dreich, as we say up here.
What's that? Dreek? Okay.
Dreich, yeah. Just means it's grey, sludgy, and a bit of rain.
Okay. Yeah, but it's a nice day down here, actually. It's very near the beach. Yeah. Anyway, I know there is a beach near Edinburgh, but
near Edinburgh, yeah, somewhere along there.
It's like air. It's logs. Yeah, where the ice cream shop is.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show. So, I mean, I suppose the thing I was looking forward to this episode actually was, for people that actually are on LinkedIn, or that 750 million people that are on LinkedIn, then what I would say in the last few months, I think Theo's posts have been the most interesting of the ones that I've been watching, because I know that I know you'll explain what you do and what you've been doing, but it's been fascinating watching the evolution of this kind of topic over the last I don't know, weeks. Is it weeks and days or hours? I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like that.
So maybe for the people that don't know Theo Priestley, do you want to just explain a bit about what you do these days? What gets you up in the morning? What's going on in your world, and what makes you a very interesting guest, I think. Even though I think you're a very interesting guest already.
I'm what's known as a futurist or a futurologist, which means I spend most of my time staring at the horizon and then thinking what could be. I've been in the tech industry if we go all the way back, I've been in the tech industry since 1998, so I feel like an old fart now. But I've been writing about industry trends since about 2007. Online in various, my own personal blog, and then in various publications like Forbes and Wired and things like that. And always around emerging technology trends, how it impacts business, how it impacts society, and the good and the bad. And that's kind of sort of led me to work with some nice big logo clients. In the past, I've worked with startup accelerators to help them in terms of their product and their product market fit and some of their messaging. And it's led me to all around the world in terms of giving talks on stages to various audiences about technology trends and their impacts. And as you've said, in the last few months has been really interesting because, the whole explosion of artificial intelligence has exploded, I would say. I mean, it's always been kicking around for decades, but it just seems to have been thrust onto center stage. And now it's at the front of mind and the tip of everybody's tongues in terms of the conversation. And it's been really interesting. But I have a particularly thorny voice, shall we say, or I'm a pain in the ass of the technology industry.
Thorny. I think you're like a cuddly. You're very cuddly.
Yeah, well, I'm very cuddly. Thank you.
Very cuddly to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mince words, and I don't take prisoners. And I think it's important to get those kind of sort of points across, because there's a lot of cheerleading. In a sense, there's a lot of the people tend to cut and paste happy thoughts because it gets likes, and you game the algorithm on various platforms to grow a following, but you don't actually stand for anything. That's the problem. And so my voice over the years has grown to stand for something, and this is why people read some of my work and read my opinions, is because I'm quite happy to put my heart in my sleeve and say what I think, rather than what the current rhetoric is. So,
or the kind of echo chamber.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, you raise an interesting point about that. I mean, it's I'll definitely tell you that you definitely don't mince your words. I think that's the. But no, but I think that's what makes it great. You know, people know you, and they know you're a straight shooter. So you're telling it from your heart and from your experience about what's the real honest take and authentic take on what's going on. And some people are always going to not like that, because it doesn't play to their story is. But some people, I think that's why. I mean, that's why I want to have it in the show, because I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I mean, you know, when I wrote the original brief, which I know you had before we joined the show today, I think it was about looking at, you know, even just, you know, jumping forward a little bit, but the future of technology, and is it, you know, tech for good, or is it, you know, the rise of the machines, and, you know, is it like Terminator, you know, like Terminator playing out, all that kind of stuff. Then, you know, when you look at some of the stuff that you have shared, it's kind of like mind blowing. I mean, I've been in technology for quite a few decades, like yourself, and I've never seen the reaction like this ever in my career. I don't, do you feel the same as well? Is it that it's like it seems to be it's like a bullet train, but then going faster and faster every week. It just seems to be perpetuating. You know, it's just. I mean, I know it was fast before, but it just seems to be a like warp factor. It's like Star Trek, you know. Hey, Scotty, let's go with warp factor 6. You know, warp factor 26.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you and I have probably been through all the major trends like cloud, big data, analytics, IoT, Web3, blockchain, metaverse, blah blah blah. And although there's been a lot of hype around it, there's never been the adoption at this scale and speed before. And it's captured everybody's imagination, not just developers, but everybody, you know, who's heard about it. It's like, well, what is this thing? You know, normally when you say metaverse or Web3 or blockchain, they're like, what? How? It doesn't really influence or impact me. But if you say AI, people go, oh, I can use an AI to do my crappy job, or do, you know, book a calendar or get my hairdressing appointment done and blah, blah, blah. You know, book me a holiday. I don't need to talk to the travel agent and things. And like you say, you know, we've lived through various AI scenarios like Terminator and Bicentennial Man. You've got Data and Star Trek that ran for, you know, God knows how long now. Even the latest one, which is fantastic. Anyone that's listening and watching, you know, go watch Picard season 3. Just feels like Star Trek Next Generation all over again. It's amazing.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
We're going to geek out on Star Trek now.
But like you say, nothing has felt like this before, and this is what I fundamentally believe in, is that it's not the same as other trends. I mean, I keep hearing people, and I was in a conference last week where a guy on stage came on and it was like, oh, it's like the Industrial Revolution, and I stood up on stage two talks after him, and I said, you know, I disagree with my learned speaker. It's nothing like the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution didn't hit everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah, you just hit a mill in Bradford. You know, it's like you know, let's smash these machines up.
Yeah, but AI is everywhere, and AI will hit every white collar job in some form or another. So it's very difficult to cheerlead something that could have and probably will have a material impact on society and on people.
Well, I mean, I know there's people about, you know, for, well, I don't know, 10 years have been preaching about this, the future of work. But actually, it's been like a concept, but then it hasn't really had any. I don't know. It's been very difficult to make it tangible.
Yeah.
But then I think now people are seeing, you know, this role or this job or this, I don't know, you know, jobs to be done. You know, they can truly be transformed by these particular types of platform and the capability. That's what I'm seeing, is the connection between, rather than just talking about the concept, you can actually do it for real. And there's also these great examples of doing it for real.
Yeah. So we've got ChatGPT, and and Midjourney and Stability AI and things like that. And you can see the impact of using those tools, like for research, for generating code, for doing data labeling, etc., etc. But then people are starting to use the APIs to build more tools on top. And so they're extending the capabilities and pushing the boundaries of what the initial platform can do. And now there's open source variants where you can spawn little AI, what they call AI agents, which is, I give it a task and it will spawn off little subtasks or subroutines and little, if you can imagine, little robots running off and doing little tasks, little jobs themselves to come back to fulfill the bigger task.
So it's like
an
army of mini agents or mini robots or bots.
Yeah, it's like outsourcing in a way, I suppose. I give you the job and then you go, I can't be bothered doing that, so I'm just going to ask 10 people to do bits of it instead. And that's automation that we've just not seen at all. I mean, we've had the promise of it with, business process management
BPO.
systems, process automation, case management, robotic process automation, which is just screen scraping of data and stuff.
RPA,
yeah. But even that just looks like an abacus compared to what this is.
It looks like an abacus. It looks like a piece of stone that you're just trying to chisel it out from.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's and this is all in the space of 6 months. In the space of 6 months in terms of the release. Obviously OpenAI and Google have been working on some of this stuff for quite a while, back in the early 2000s. So it's not just like, someone had a light bulb moment, sat down, coded something, and bang, there you go, it's an AI. But the transformation from that concept to being released and capturing the imagination and suddenly everybody's talking about it has been literally 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, the person that the guy that left Google recently,
Geoffrey Hinton.
Yeah, because he's actually a Brit originally, isn't he? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
What's your view on that?
I posted about it on Twitter and I had a really interesting comment, which was like, what did he say?
Well, he replied to you.
Yeah, no, not Geoffrey. Geoffrey didn't, but this guy replied to me, and he's like, that's it. The bro invented Ultron, and then he's not even coming back for a redemption arc to basically save us from it. He invented Ultron, then he basically left, and he's got no redemption arc. And we're just going to have to deal with it now. And I just thought that's actually really quite funny because, one, it's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting perspective because I mean, yes, he could have actually stayed in Google and impacted the ethical development of it, but instead he's just left to shout at the sidelines. But that the analogy towards Iron Man, or it was the second Avengers movie where Tony Stark and Thingy Banner sit down and create an AI literally the same way, and then Ultron pops up, and then they have to deal with it. But this is from like a common, the common man perspective, and even they can understand that here's this guy who basically created something that has the capacity to do harm as well as good, and then he's just gone, I'm not really that bothered anymore. I've left. So that made me smile, but I agree with him. He could have done it in a different way. He could have stayed with Google and actually fought internally to keep it on track.
I mean, I haven't read the details, but is it because he feels that they're not the management and the future of how they're going to manage it is not the way that he envisaged? That's what he's concerned about, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, he also said I can speak freely without impacting Google's share price, but I mean that's like he's one guy. Nobody's really going to care. Let's put it that way. And I don't think the shareholders are going to care too much. So he was probably left before he was pushed.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, the incredible thing I find is that when I got involved in the tech industry many decades ago, people were saying, "Why why are you getting involved in the tech industry?" And now it's suddenly a very very interesting place to be.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, so one of the things I was going to say to you was, and this is a big high 10 to you, high 10 to Theo, was that, and if for anybody that's not seen this, then I'll put this in the show notes or the episode notes after we publish this. But there's a fantastic graphic that Theo used when he opens his TED talk or TEDx talk when you did it. I think it was in Edinburgh. That's right, a few years
It
ago.
was in Glasgow, yeah.
Was it in Glasgow? Oh, Glasgow.
Yeah.
Glasgow. Okay. Could you want to explain? Could you explain to the audience who you had up as an infographic? Who people haven't seen this because it's very
Yeah,
amusing.
sure. It's so the title of the TED Talk, if you want to look at it, was "Would you follow a robot leader?" And the opening gambit and the opening slide or image was Theresa May as Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, and Bender dressed in a power suit like he was sitting in the White House. And so, and of course, and of course,
spot the analogy to today. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of dates that, because it was back in 2017, so that's when Theresa May was in power. But I got away with it because they did say don't use images that will date the presentation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I said, well, technically, it's not really Theresa May, but it is. But I'll get away with it because it's kind of topical. So yeah, so that was the opening gambit.
Well, I mean, and now we're I don't know. We're now 6 years later. Do you? I suppose this is the thing. I was on a session this week. Is that this thing about the I don't know the construct of master and servant. Yeah. The thing about the human race is viewed as I don't know the species that is the master. Yeah. Then you start to create this capability, this technology that then becomes more and more capable. Then does it become a peer? Then does it become the master? So I suppose that was the point I presume you were alluding to in your TED talk. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's if you boil it down, there's three stages. You've got AI, which we have now, which is kind of narrow. It does what it does, and it does it well, but you couldn't ask it to make a cup of tea or anything. You can't, a Tesla autopilot will drive its car, but you can't ask it to do your maths homework. Um, then you've got artificial general intelligence, which is basically the human intellect equivalent of AI. So it can do everything that a human can do. It can create, it can muse, it can understand, etc. And then you have ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, which is the godlike one that everybody.
The sentinel being. Is that what you?
Yeah, the sentient ones, the ones that are
Sentient, yeah.
way above what we are. So what they're saying is, we're at the kind of AI level, the basic stuff just now. They expect AGI in the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, maybe sooner, depending on how things are tracking. And ASI is further out or we just don't know what that would even look like. How could you spot it? We wouldn't know. And so the master and servant thing gets interesting the closer you get to something that has our level of intellect. Because if it has our level of intellect, then it's not going to want to be, work or be subservient. No man does, or no woman does, or no child, even children exercise their rights.
Men like being subservient, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, some men, yeah, but
keep it to yourself.
but but even children exercise their independence because they are, they're battling for their right for identity and their independence, and so they'll exercise
and attention, yeah,
and attention, yeah, and would an AI do this? Now, this is a really interesting thing because humans are very good at anthropomorphizing and projecting themselves onto incorporeal objects and things like that, inanimate objects. And we get to a really sort of interesting and grey kind of philosophical area where we, do we recognize an AGI or even an ASI as its own separate entity with rights, or do we enforce our own human rights on top of something that isn't human? And I don't know what the real answer is here, but I do think that as we get closer to AGI and as we get even closer to ASI, no true artificial intelligence will want to be governed by a species that doesn't even uphold its own morals and ethics. And then you get, even back in the 40s, there was an article that said you will own robot slaves by 1965. So even back then, even back then, they were already projecting the image of slavery on top of robotics and artificial intelligence and this subservient race that will do everything.
Humans still being the dominant species, though.
Humans still being in the dominant species. But I actually think that's a fairly ignorant stance now. I mean, even Jan LeCun, who works for Meta, has basically come out and said, "Oh, we will always be dominant." And I need to find what the quote was if you want to hang fire. But the quote, which kind of sort of mind boggled me, and it shows. It kind of shows
the chief AI guy there at Meta.
Yeah. We can design AI systems to be both super intelligent and submissive to humans. No, we can't. I always wonder why people assume that intelligent entities will necessarily want to dominate. Well, that's what you've just said in your first opening statement, mate. That's just plain false, even with the human species. Well, no, because men have enslaved men before. And we've enslaved women and we've enslaved children. We forced them up the fucking chimneys in Britain. So I find that staggeringly ignorant from a very intelligent man, but I think this actually shows the problem.
But they did a musical about that called Mary Poppins, so it's okay.
Well, it's okay if we
look. Dick Van Dyke's got a lot to answer for, but he did some good dance routines.
Well, there you go, right? Well, all we have to do is enslave AI, but just make it into a musical, and it'll be fine. It'll be acceptable.
Hey, we just talked about something. Hey, AI the musical.
AI the musical. But I think this is the problem.
You get lots of robots coming on stage, in the West End,
I'll get people to dress up as them, yeah.
That's a great idea. We should. I've got some contacts in producer land in West End.
Well, go and contact Lin-Manuel Miranda. He'd be right up for this. He did Hamilton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Oh, fantastic. I was outside that the Victoria Palace the other day, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's a great idea.
There you go.
First the TEDx, now the musical. Yeah, I mean, the thing I've heard, I suppose, is that the AGI level. I mean, I appreciate what the AI level being individual capabilities, but then the AGI, as it becomes like analogous to human intelligence, then that gets into some really kind of, interesting scenarios, scary scenarios. You've effectively got a peer. I mean, you've got a peer, or you're bordering on superior.
Mm-hmm.
More intellectual being coexisting in the same environment. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in the next few years for sure.
And how does it? I don't know if this is related to it, but how does that relate to the Ray Kurzweil stuff with, like the singularity moment and stuff like that? Is that kind of linked to that as well, or is it separate? Do you think?
No. It's linked because Ray says that by 2070 or so that we'll see the singularity, which is humans and AI merging, or humans and robotics merging. And I'm pretty sure they've started to bring down the prediction from a AGI from that time frame to like 2045 now. And
well, just in the last few weeks, it's gone down from 2070 to 2045.
well, I think it could actually be slightly sooner. I'm pretty sure I've seen 2033 being quoted by someone as well.
Oh, really?
And to be honest, another 10 years. Well, I mean, if you keep the pace of this up, yeah, I mean, it's very possible that we would have AGI in another 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you probably watched them, but I've been watching a few of the Lex Friedman sessions with people like Sam Altman and things like that. Obviously, I think he's sat in MIT, isn't he? He's like a research scientist in MIT.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's I am absolutely staggered about how it's. I mean, I was talking to a few companies recently over the last few weeks, and they talk about. This is like talking to like a CTO or a CIO in a large business, and they said we the same problem. They said basically people from the business are coming to the technology leader and saying we want to use ChatGPT. Where can we use ChatGPT? And this guy goes, well, what's the problem you're trying to fix? Yeah. But there's this kind of wildfire kind of going across organizations at the moment. I don't know if you've been getting the same feedback as well. People are trying to see how they can use these things. So it's kind of like lit the blue touch paper and it's actually off.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those conversations and a lot of that has been happening at the ground floor level. So it's the workers that have been doing it and experimenting, and then finding that they can make their job, 5 times 10x faster by giving it to an AI. The problem is that they're also, the problem is kind of twofold. One is that you're proving that you could either do something, you can get 10 times the workload, or you're not really that efficient and you're not needed once the automation comes in. And two, the more you use it and the more sophisticated your use case becomes using it, all you're doing is training your replacement, because this is what reinforcement learning is. With human input is humans are basically helping train the large language models and the AI to become smarter and to understand more complex tasks and what kind of requests it can handle. So it's yeah, and then the other thing as well is that these people sort of running towards it, going, put in my strategy document and see what it says, blah blah blah. Where's your corporate information going? Your security guys, your IT security guys must be having nightmares at the moment with the amount of people who are just throwing anything into their spreadsheets, financial documents, corporate strategies, to try and to make sense of something that you wrote in the first place. I just find it bizarre, but it's
but where does that information go then? Where does, because I mean I believe that if you put it into ChatGPT, there's no privacy protection on it.
So they do have security in place. They're releasing a business API, which I think has more, which is more probably attuned to, and this I could probably see this more towards Microsoft's influence and their investment in OpenAI, for example, being business oriented and being secure in the cloud. But for the average person who's using this, your information goes to OpenAI, and you have to physically opt out if you don't want it to. And of course, nobody remembers to opt out, do they?
That little tick box.
Yeah. I think you have to actually fill in a form. Nobody remembers this stuff.
You have to fill in a form and fax it or send it by carrier pigeon.
Exactly, yeah. And it's the same with like the artist stuff with Stability AI and with Midjourney and things like that. Is that they've scraped all the images off the web and used it to train. And then of course the artist communities, they're taking them to court at the moment. But the artist community is up in arms because no permissions were sought to take their work and use to train an algorithm that someone else can profit from. And of course,
who are they suing? You mean they're suing Midjourney and Stability AI?
Yeah. So there's a group of artists that have come together to actually take them to court.
Oh, so
in
to actually create their original Mid-Journey platform, like their catalog of images, they've actually scraped the internet as
yeah,
the input to the data set.
yeah.
Oh my! And they've not. Oh, right. Okay.
Okay, so
So that's an IP protection nightmare, then, isn't it?
exactly, that's copyright, IP, that kind of thing. A lot of these images have been used in trademarked and and
Mm,
intellectual property elsewhere. Movies, arts, games, etc.
mm.
So and all without permission. So and now there's an effort that says, oh well, you can, we're going to help people opt out of these data sets. Now the thing is, these data sets are like there's 2 billion images in one particular data set. All right, so one, it's a monumental task to ask people to submit to have their information removed. But the thing is that nobody's talking about, and especially these companies are talking about, is that it's already been trained. Removing it after the fact means nothing. All it does is actually stops the next person or the next company from using that data set with a full catalog of images that can help it train. But the fact is that the companies that got there first have already trained their algorithms on the data, so they don't care, and they're continually updating
Yeah,
these
it's like the horse is bolted, basically, isn't it?
exactly.
Mm.
So there's a bit of a false narrative being spun around this opt-out stuff at the
But
moment.
so these companies that have done that, then they just went ahead and did that. They just did the scan, did the search, did the cataloging.
Oh, you can buy that. You can buy the stuff. You can buy the data sets. So ChatGPT was trained on what's known as the pile, and it's 860 or 820 gigabytes of data that's scraped from the web of text information, and that's websites, that's research papers,
Mm-hmm.
that's GitHub, all the code on GitHub, etc., etc.
All the code on GitHub.
Yeah, all your blogs and all that kind of sort of thing,
Wow.
and websites and whatnot. That's all been scraped to train the GPT-4 and GPT-3 that came before it.
So they've indexed the web, basically. They've indexed the world.
Well, it's not. It's more than indexing, because indexing is what Google does for search. They've semantically scraped the web.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that shows you the
But they've
extent.
done that without permission, though.
Yeah, yeah. But they get around it by saying, "Oh, well, we sourced it ethically." Well, you didn't really. You got it from someone who sold it to you, but they didn't source it ethically. But you can claim that you sourced it ethically because you're just buying it from another vendor. So you have like plausible deniability in a sense. You
So
have
where
that.
did they buy it from? The dark web?
No, there's companies that sell this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
We're in the wrong business.
we are indeed.
That's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that I don't think
It's what
people
you
are
call
very
a new economic model.
well. When they say data is the new, years ago when big data and all that kind of thing, they said, "Oh, data is the new oil." I don't think they had any appreciation of what they really were talking about until today.
Wow. So how do you think this is going to play out then? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have some, very sort of harsh views on this. So the way things are going right now, I do see, real sort of structural unemployment issues, and the fact that society and especially governments just don't know what they're doing to combat it.
On the
I see a
policy
lot of,
side, you mean?
yeah, on the policy side, on the regulation side, it doesn't go far enough because, they're not thinking further ahead. They don't have um, the intellect within governments to understand what's going on, so they turn to research houses and academia. And unfortunately, these guys have spent all their time in a lab and don't actually look out the window to understand the real impacts on the real world, and what happens to people.
Mm.
There's lots of talk around universal basic income, UBI, being a supporting mechanism for society in general, but I don't understand where the money's going to come from. We don't have a money printer big enough to support that. They talk about taxing the companies who make people redundant through the use of AI, but that's just not how capitalism
An
works
AI
either.
tax.
An
Okay.
AI tax, yeah, robot
That's
tax.
really going to help adoption, isn't
Well,
it?
exactly. So we've got a lot of thinking to do, I think, and over the next 10 years, as this stuff matures, I think it's going to force us to, pay attention. The other thing as well is that the negative impact is mental health. We've just come out of a pandemic that affected people mentally and physically, caused a fair bit of loneliness and isolation. And
Mm.
now we've got this thing that's basically coming along and taking away your job prospects.
Mm.
And especially for those in university right now, who are sitting in first, second year of their degree or masters or whatever, thinking
Mm.
I'm going to do a PhD for another 5 years. PhD in what career?
Mm.
Because
What do
by
you
the time you,
specialize in?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
because by the time you come out, um, that job, that career may no longer exist or will have changed materially.
Mm.
And so the educational system is not geared towards helping people make the right career choices um, in this new world. So structurally, society is in a bit of a mess to cope with this.
But then who's going to take the lead on that?
Well, it's not going to be the
You
companies that that develop the AI. Let's put it that
no,
way.
no, 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 exactly, because they're going to profit from it, aren't they? So I suppose it's the, but it is. I think it is a bit of a, it is definitely a grey area because it's like what. I mean, my sons are 19 and 17 now, and they're asking me, "What should I do, Dad? What should I
Mm.
do?" Yeah, I'm going. I don't really know what you should do. um, what is the path? Um,
Well,
there's also a thing about I don't want to, as a parent, I don't want to tell them what to do either.
mm,
But I want to act as a sounding board, but I don't want to give them the answer. So I think you've got to discover it yourself. But I think it's even more, to your point, I think it's even more perplexing once you realise the ramifications of what you just said.
yeah, I mean, people sort of go, "Oh, it's not going to happen overnight." Yes, I know that, but it's going to happen to a generation that comes after us.
Mm.
And the speed at which this is happening, we don't really have the luxury of time. And this is the
Mm.
problem with the governmental system or the voting system that we have, is that we recycle governments and people and politicians every 4 years, but there's no sustainable strategy that can, or no sustainable thought process that helps us combat this kind of sort of thing, because it's always going to be, oh, blame the last government because they
Yeah.
didn't do anything.
Mm.
So even political structures aren't geared towards
Mm.
this either. And so when people go, oh yeah, he's going to destroy humanity, I think our own apathy and appetite to change is probably going to do more harm than the AI does.
But what you mean, the resistance to change?
Well, yeah, the
You mean
resistance to make
not
material,
embracing it?
yeah, the resistance to make material and structural change at a
Mm.
speed that has to match the technology, the pace of technology, and especially
Mm.
the pace of AI and the development of AI. So, I mean,
Because what you're saying, the technology flywheels is getting faster and faster,
yeah,
but actually the wheels of the other wheels are not going quite as quick.
no, 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 no. So, so we're
Mm.
always playing catch up, but unfortunately, the runaway train is getting further away from us.
Mm. Mm. Yeah,
I do see that,
it's like a horse in a Lamborghini.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do see that the humanities, for example, the arts, culture, humanities, I think will probably play a stronger role um, going forward. The sciences as well, um, rather than all the the really more boring, mundane stuff like sitting in an office processing mortgage applications all day long, that kind of thing. None of these jobs add significant value to society. And quite frankly, if AI takes them, all the more for it, because then it just means that we're free to do things that move society and civilization forward, not capitalism forward. So, so the humanities, arts, blue collar jobs, for example, plumbing, plumbers, electricians, etc. Back in, well, you'll remember this, back in it would have been the 90s, during the last Labour government. It was all about pushing, learn digital skills, blah, blah, blah. And so what happened was everybody started to learn digital skills, and then there was this huge gap of blue collar work that became, that nobody could actually take care of.
Oh, you mean like because nobody went into the apprenticeships?
Yeah, because they all wanted to learn digital because they saw digital was the future, and they saw that there was more money in digital. But interestingly, what happened was that the people who were in overworked white collar jobs like surgeons, physicians, doctors, and nurses retrained to become plumbers and electricians and had better quality of life, more money, more free time. And so, we had a kind of recycling in a sense. But the problem we now face is that message of learning digital skills has gone on for 3 decades now. And the problem is that AI is just very good at eating up everything that is digital.
Kind of wipes that out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we've kind of set ourselves up for a fall, in a way.
Yeah, that's kind of you're spot on there. Actually, it's the kind of it's a complete structural shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna go and buy a painting outfit this afternoon. Then I'm gonna go and buy some colours and some brushes.
Well, you have to be in queue then.
Yeah. I'm gonna do my. It's selling Salvador Dali. I'm gonna grow a big mustache.
All right.
Or either do that or write poetry. Yeah.
Poetry about AI.
It's going to be called the AP&T sessions. Yeah. Artistry, poetry, and technology sessions. So one of the things I was going to ask you, I know we jumped over this, but was about how did you fall into this whole area? What when you started getting involved in technology, how did that happen? Because was it planned, or did you just kind of like did some kind of thing event happen that
No, it was never planned. I mean, I've been a geek ever since I was a child. I received my first comic book when I was in hospital. And
as a baby, when you were just coming out of the womb.
I must ask my mum that, actually. Yeah.
Was it the B note?
Yeah. No. I got DC straight off the bat.
DC. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Killer Croc's first appearance in Batman was my first comic book, believe it or not. So I've been a geek. I used to run home from primary school and in the afternoon sit down in the kitchen with a black and white portable as my mum was cooking dinner and watch Star Trek at 6 o'clock on BBC Two.
The William Shatner one.
The William Shatner one.
Oh, cool.
So I've always been a geek. I've always been interested in technology in the future. I was the person that the parents turned to program the VCR and all that kind of sort of thing. All those stories that you had from back in the 70s and 80s. And I've just kind of sort of grown up with all the technology trends, and it's always really interested me. And my first sort of touch with corporate or enterprise technology was COBOL programming on the mainframe on the banks. Ooh. Yeah, that's going back. And and as I got involved in change programs and IT and stuff like that, I just started to write about it. because I saw that there was, back in the sort of early 2000s, I used to read a lot of blogs, and there's some really interesting people, and they had their own voice and stuff like that. And I thought I could start writing, start putting down some thoughts about all the things that I've seen, because a lot of the time you were told to read Gartner and Forrester reports, for example. And I'm reading these things and I'm thinking, but that's not what happens. None of this actually happens on the ground floor. So I started writing from a sort of worker's perspective.
Not from a practitioner point of view.
Yeah. About these trends, and that's kind of grown from there. And as I kept writing, I kept looking and identifying emerging technology trends and where things were going. And that's kind of how I fell into the futurist type stuff. I mean, I don't have any formal futurist training. There's no master's degree behind it or anything else like that. It was more a case of, oh, you're a futurist because you talk about this stuff. And I just thought, if the label sticks and it fits, then fair enough, I'll take it.
It's a cool business card, though.
Oh yeah, because people, starting, and then if you say, oh, I'm a futurist, and they go, all right, okay, what's that all about? And then you get your tattoos out, and they're like, whoa, tell us more about that. It breaks the ice.
I hope you got some robots on those tattoos.
Actually, I don't know, because one side is DC, and then the other side is actually Skyrim. So I've avoided robots altogether.
What DC characters have you got in your arm?
I've got the Justice League, the original one. It was a piece of work done by,
really?
done by a comic book artist called Alex Ross, who draws them in a particular style that I really like. And I just got my tattoo artist to basically take that piece of art and then put it all over my arm.
Has it got Aquaman on there?
It has. It's got Martian Manhunter. It's got Green Lantern, Superman, Aquaman, The Flash, and of course Batman and Wonder Woman as well.
Yeah, but which Batman? Which Batman is it?
What do you mean?
I hope it's the Michael Keaton version.
Well, no, because it's not a movie. This isn't the movie. It's not a movie sleeve. It's comic books.
So that was my turn of humor again. Sorry.
Although I am really looking forward to Michael Keaton coming back in the new Flash movie.
Exactly.
So
I think he's definitely the best one.
Oh yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed it when he first came out back in was it 84? I
mean, if you want to have a giggle, if you just watching that 1989 Batman version, I just think Jack Nicholson is absolutely brilliant in it. I mean, I know Heath Ledger's very good as well when later on with Joker, but no, I think that's fantastic. Well, I didn't realize you'd done that actually. That's fantastic. Obviously, for people not watching this on YouTube, that might be a bit difficult at this part of the episode. So you basically grew up on the comics, and then you kind of fell into technology, and then you ended up working for a few technology companies, didn't you? Well, you worked for some banks, I think, and then you worked for some technology companies, I think.
Yeah, I worked for some banks, UK and European banks. I've worked for software companies like SAP, Software AG, which is another German sort of technology IoT kind of firm, and then through corporate gigs and things like that, I've worked with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Bosch, Siemens. So I've worked with technology companies for a long time. I've got about 7 bookshelves filled with science fiction books as well, novels. So I devour science fiction as well as comics.
So what's your favorite book then? What would you say your favorite science fiction book is?
Oh, it's completely off kilter. It's actually it's called Gateway by. Funnily enough, there is a robot in it. It's called Gateway by Frederick Pohl, one of the sort of old classic sci-fi authors. And it's I can't give too much away. But it's one of my favorite books. I read it and I thought, yeah, this is great. I've actually got a hardback first print with his signature on it because I just thought I just have to have something else other than the little sort of paperback stuff. Another one is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. A great book as well. Is it science fiction? You could argue it, I suppose, but a brilliant book. And I've got Asimovs and things like that, but I do prefer a lot of the older sci-fi.
And do you think Hollywood, for example, has treated those in the right way when they've actually converted, their treatment of sci-fi in the future? Do you think they've done a good job on that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they absolutely messed up I Am Legend, for example.
Mm.
And they've done various
Was
adaptations. I
that the
think,
one that was the one with Will Smith, wasn't it?
yeah, it was. It was just terrible. Um, but has Hollywood treated science fiction, or certainly I mean, yeah, I mean, you've seen various depictions of it. I think most of it is always dystopian because
Mm.
it makes for a better story. Nobody wants to watch 2 hours of where nothing happens because society is perfect.
Mm.
Um, so it always makes for a better
Well, it's a
story.
hero's journey, isn't it? I mean, that's what they
Well,
do. They
that's
put
it.
they
Yeah,
engineer the hero's journey into every. It's like a formula, isn't it?
yeah. But what's interesting, if you talk about Hollywood and TV, then is that how quickly Black Mirror has become a documentary rather than something horrifically surreal. I actually think life in general has accelerated beyond what Black Mirror can cope
Mm.
with. To be honest, the writer's Charlie Brooker.
Mm. Mm.
So the new
Yeah, it's
series is going to be quite interesting.
what catch up time.
Well, the new series comes out, I think, in June, end of May, June, of Black Mirror, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they come up with because obviously the episodes before it were kind of prescient in a way.
Mm.
It's like, oh, this is terrible. It can never happen. It's so
Mm.
dystopian. And then literally 6 months later, somebody takes it and uses it to create a startup. And I'm just wondering what they're
Mm.
going to do next that actually makes people go, ooh, I didn't see that coming.
Mm. 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 Yeah, keep the shock and awe up. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, they need to.
Mm. Fascinating. So one of the things we talk about on this show is about peaks and valleys.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on peaks and valleys in your journey so far that you want to share with the audience?
Peaks and valleys. Um, highs and lows. I guess so. Well, a few peaks. So some of the peaks have been, when I first started writing about technology trends and things like that, I actually got picked up by a software company and hired as their chief evangelist. And I kind of thought that cemented a lot of the effort that I put into writing about the technology trends and
Mm.
the understanding of the value of that kind of sort of work.
Well, you felt recognised from that point.
Yeah, affirmed in a way.
Mm.
And I had a voice of authority, and someone wanted to actually use it to sort of put themselves on the map.
Mm.
Um, the TEDx was another peak because again, it's nice to be invited to these things. I mean, it was one of the bigger events, so to have 2,000 people staring at you, who all have their own expectations of what's going to come out of your own mouth, rather than a
Mm.
corporate audience that will want to hear a specific thing,
Mm.
it was nerve wracking and very hard, but at the same time, it was incredibly rewarding.
Mm.
Um, birth of your kids, obviously, getting married for the second time, that was an absolute peak of perfection, that one. Um, and then you get to the lows, and I guess the lows have been,
No, valleys, not lows,
oh,
valleys.
okay,
I mean,
valleys.
obviously,
Okay.
you're in Scotland, you see, so you've got lots of mountains and you've got
All
lots of
right. Okay.
mountains and valleys. We should call it mountains and valleys, shouldn't we?
I guess the slope of disillusionment, if you want, or the trough of disillusionment.
Yeah,
That's
to
it.
quote a famous analyst firm's analogy, yeah.
Yeah. Has been that as I get older, it becomes a lot harder for me to, shall we say, well, how would you put it? I think because my views have become quite forthright, and so the peak is, I guess, the peak of inflated expectations or whatever you want to call it. I guess the peak is that it's garnered me a great audience. People like to hear what I think. I get
Mm.
invited to conferences and all this kind of sort of thing. But unfortunately, the negative side of that is that I become ever more unemployable because I just piss everybody off.
Right.
And that's something that I have to continually reckon with. And it does send you on a bit of a imposter syndrome kind of spiral as well.
Mm.
I think I suffer from imposter syndrome quite a bit, especially in some of the industries that I've worked in before, because it's like there are so many amazing people here. I have no right to be here in a sense. I didn't gain an educational qualification to work in this sector. I just have very sharp insight, I guess, and
Mm.
gut instinct, and it helps.
And good looks and wit.
Well, I'd say wit. Yeah, I'm not sure about the good looks, but
You got
but
some good tattoos. Good
I've got
tattoos.
some good tattoos. Yeah, but I turn 51 at the end of this month, and the technology industry has a huge ageism problem,
Mm.
along with sexism and racism and everything else. Um, and I recognize that my age and also my opinions are just not going to help anymore. And so I have this sort of ever constant fear of what's gonna happen, which I have to sort of contend with. And I guess that's a constant valley that I'm kind of sort of
Mm.
battling against. I also feel it feels a bit Sisyphus in a way. I am at the bottom of the valley and I'm trying to claw my way back, and then I keep slipping back down again. So that's something that I have to contend with, um, quite a fair bit.
Yeah, but my feedback to you would be just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's
Oh,
great.
I can't stop. I mean, it's
From my point of view, knowing you and seeing the stuff that you are sharing and generally doing, then I would say do more.
yeah. So I can't stop because then I would become inauthentic in a way.
Mm.
And I've now reached this point as well where I'm turning down jobs because it would be, or no, turning down like speaking gigs, for example. I've been asked to do a couple of speaking gigs recently, and one chair position for a conference.
Oh, you
And
mentioned. I think you mentioned this when we spoke the other day. Yeah.
yeah, and it goes against some of the ethical concerns I have with artificial intelligence, for example.
Mm.
I can't consciously or in good conscience stand in front of 500 people and say everything's hunky dory, knowing that their jobs are going to be materially impacted. And then the recent chair position was, and this conference just was like a who's who in the AI world,
Mm.
but they wanted me to chair a particular section of the conference that talked about using AI in the creatives industry, and championing it. And the thing is that, well, one, a chair position, you can't offer a counter position. You just literally have to stand up and go, here's such and such from this company
Yeah, you're more like a
talking about
conduct.
blah, blah,
You're more like
blah.
a conductor kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
timekeeper. So I can't
Mm.
really get my point across. And then the second thing
Right.
is that I know a lot of people in the creative industry, and that industry is suffering right now, really suffering. And so I can't take a position, a chair
Mm.
position, and receive money, knowing that I'm helping other people promote their stuff that is impacting other people in the background. So
Mm. But
again,
that's what you're talking about there is principles and integrity,
yeah, I mean,
which is
and
which
and
is which is whatever anybody talks about,
mm,
whether it's a machine or a human, that's important. It's incredibly important.
yeah, but again, on the flip side, you enter that sort of valley where it counts against you in a sense because it discounts you from being able to work with particular conferences or particular companies because you have a moral stance against some of the things that are happening. What
Mm.
I would like to see is obviously someone taking people like myself internally to be able to challenge what they do,
Mm.
um, and make them think about some of the moral and ethical implications of what they do, rather than release a product and then think about it later, or wait till the regulators crop up.
Yeah.
And I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer.
So design it for value add in the age of humans. Yeah. So
Yeah, not value extraction, but value add.
correct.
And I think the other thing that I have a particular view against is that a lot of these companies employ researchers in academia who have spent all their time in a lab and do not have any connection with the world outside. So they don't know how people are using these tools outside of the intended use cases. They don't know what jobs are affected and what people are actually thinking about it. I mean, you only have to log on to Reddit, for example, and surf a few forums to see how it's impacted the mental health of a lot of these professions, because there's real concern and worry about what am I going to do in the next year if I can't find work, etc. So none of these opinions are being filtered back into these companies because they're all still looking at it from an academic point of view.
And just on that, touching on that creative point, and what you, when you say people in the creative industry, what are they, what kind of roles are you talking about, and what are the impacts that they're thinking are going to happen?
Right, so artists for a start, copywriters, writers, anything that ChatGPT, which is text-based, and Midjourney and Stability AI, which is art-based, will touch, are basically being impacted. So I've seen conversations where freelance copywriters are now being disengaged by their clients because their clients are happy with the, in inverted commas, because this is a quote, good enough result that they get from using ChatGPT or another AI rather than employing a freelance, copywriter to
So they've
generate
learned how to
something.
do prompt engineering and the prompting the
Yeah, so
bots.
the clients now have the power to basically do some of this work themselves.
Right.
And the same with concept art and artists. Concept artists who work in video games, who work in the movie industry as well, are now starting to see their work not only being used to train something, and everybody's basically taking a dump on them, saying, "Oh, well, you should have been better. Ha ha. We can do stuff just by talking to the machine." But also that their work is being, they're either being not employed because the client is now using using Midjourney internally to generate the work, or they're being asked to, oh, can you generate something using Midjourney, or draw something and then use Midjourney to improve upon it, kind of thing. And the impact, not only the financial impact, but in terms of losing money and revenue, but the impact on self-esteem, on your self-worth, on the worth that you put,
because it's a developed skill, isn't it, over many years.
Absolutely, yeah. So this, like I said, it all comes back down to sort of mental health as well, and these, as the worry of not being able to find a job, and the worry of knowing that your clients are now just going, I'm happy with good enough because it saved me a few bob, is a toll that these companies just don't understand.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I hope there's a good future for podcasters.
Well, I don't know, because I've already seen two GPT models being used to talk to each other on a YouTube channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So it was like a 24-hour channel experiment where I think it was on Twitch, and they had two bots talking to each other.
Well, just to let you know, audience, the future episode will actually be Theo and Andrew, the TNT show. Yeah, Theo and Turner. As basically as two bots.
Two bots. Yeah.
We will actually be hearing. We'll be on the beach drinking pina coladas. I'll be having a pint of heavy in the pub in Edinburgh on Princess Street. So, I suppose to converse that, or to reverse that question, then I suppose what are you most excited about?
I still think that there is something to do with, and I know it would probably set some eyeballs rolling, with the metaverse because we still haven't seen anything happen yet. I'm quite interested in that. I'm quite interested in BCI, which is brain computer interfaces, not for the swanky stuff, making yourself live forever, consciousness, etc.
Well, the Neuralink stuff.
The neural, well, I don't like Neuralink because Elon Musk runs it, and I don't think, yeah, by the by. But I think those kind of things to help people with neurological conditions um, are going to be quite interesting. And in fact, I saw two pieces of research this week. One was basically using MRIs to understand what happens with the brain on death, because
Okay.
apparently when you're just about to die, the brain just fires off, and there's just this spurt of activity, and they don't know what it means. And then I saw another piece of research that actually used MRIs to link to a GPT model to basically predict what someone was thinking.
Oh wow.
Now, it doesn't mean that I can, hook my head up to the computer, and
This will
ChatGPT is going
definitely
to
be the
know.
next episode. This will be the next episode when we're looked up.
But what was really interesting was that, if you trained the GPT model on the individual, not generically, but on the individual, then it became 80% accurate in being able to understand the person's thought just by looking at the brain pattern and what they were thinking. And
Wow.
so it's spat out basically the paragraph or whatever of thoughts. So I think that kind of research coupled with BCI could unlock people with like motor neuron disease, for example. If we put away some of the dystopian things like, mind reading and blah blah blah, I think people with neurological conditions, people who suffer migraines, people who are trapped in their own body but can't communicate, I think you could see some amazing benefit coming out of that. Dementia, Alzheimer's, all these kind of sort of thing. So I think there's some real positive work that could come out of that from the medical profession. Space is obviously really exciting. I think our exploration of our own backyard still needs to happen. I don't see us living on Mars anytime soon because it's just too dangerous. But I do see stepping stones towards the moon becoming more realistic.
I thought the moon was in Hollywood.
The moon doesn't exist, mate. The Earth is still flat. So there's lots of interesting things. I would love to see different different structural, societal structures coming out of AI, for example. Where we're not reliant on, money, UBI, capitalism, extreme forms of. I do think that if AI does have this material impact over the next 20 years or so, then we can see some fundamental shifts that actually might have some positive good or net positive gains for people in general or civilization
rather
in
than it
general.
being doom and gloom and
Yeah.
negative. Yeah.
But we have to want to.
That'll be a refreshing change, won't it?
Well, yeah, I think we have to want it. That's the thing. And collectively we have to want it, not just, pockets of people.
And make it happen rather than rhetoric.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, thank you.
It's all right.
So the way we usually kind of encapsulate the episodes is we ask for some pearls of wisdom.
Oh God.
And not every guest reacts like Theo just did. Said, "Oh God, yeah, praise the Lord." So I suppose if you were going to say about 2 or 3, I don't know, or a few takeaways, any thoughts on that you want to share? Based on what you've learned over your journey so far, is this if people are embarking on things or they're in the middle of their journey, or what are the things that you would like to say to them or share with them?
Stay curious, for one. I just don't think there's enough curiosity in the world. I think people are happy with some not all in sweeping generalization, but people are happy with their lot and they don't want to be curious about the world around them. and the only way to break out of like filter bubbles and echo chambers is to become curious. And that's how I've kind of sort of stayed the way I am and been on top of like emerging trends and thing, is to be curious about something that I've heard in a conversation or whatever, and just quickly. I mean, supposedly we have the world's information at our fingertips, and yet all we do is look at cat memes and things. Satisfy your own curiosity by learning.
Not to tell them about that. That was my secret.
But the curiosity thing sort of leads to just wanting to learn. And so don't stop learning. The other thing as well is just pick up a book. Don't spend all your time online. Just read books. Books are great. Whether it's a business book or whether it's a piece of science fiction or whatever, it doesn't matter. I think reading is great for the brain. I think it's just great in general, and again, it supports artists as well. Go see a musical. Go see a show.
Go and see our show.
I mean, I was fortunate to watch the Royal. I've got to get this right. Royal Scottish National Orchestra. This week, playing a selection of video game music soundtracks.
All right.
And it's to be in front of
what was it, Pac-Man and Space Invaders?
No, I was like proper, I say proper video games. I mean, believe it or not, they did actually play a selection of Nintendo.
Really?
Yeah, and it worked really well. But there was things like
Donkey Kong. That's what
no, I don't think Donkey Kong was in there, but Zelda was.
Zelda.
Yeah, but to hear people, to hear 100 or so musicians all playing at once has an emotional impact. Right. And I think that's what we need to retain as well. Curiosity, always learning, read a book, and remember that you are an emotional meatbag, and that means connecting with other people and being part of a much bigger thing.
Don't just stay in your cubicle.
Yep. Dilbert.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing those. So I suppose the final question is, I suppose if anybody wants to know more about Theo Priestley or get hold of you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, you'll see me being an antagonistic idiot on LinkedIn and on Twitter, where I mostly hang out. I have a personal website, which is theopriestley.com. If you want to engage in any speaking engagements and stuff like that. You don't have to search far to find me.
Yeah, and coming to the West End in 2025
with AI the musical. Yeah.
We should do that. We should talk about that. I think I fancy doing that. That'd be a great idea. Well, it's all the co-creation on the episode. Well, thank you very much, Theo, for coming on the show today.
No, thanks for asking me.
And thanks for sharing all these insights. I think it'd be very, very for people who've been listening. Hopefully, you found it educational. And there's lots of buzzwords in this whole AI area, and I think there's also lots of. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't think of a more suitable person to have on the show to talk about this topic. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
So that was Theo Priestley, futurist, futurologist. Chief Future Officer, not CFO, not Chief Finance Officer, Chief Futurologist Officer, if I can speak of it. And that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Have a lovely day. Thank you for coming.